And I am recording.
I am also recording.
Let's do a sync clap on 3, 2, 1, clap. 3, 2, 1. June, can you believe that we are about to meet in person for the third time ever?
Is it
third time? Fourth time?
I think, hold on, let me count. It was, first time was, I think, Chicago.
Right.
And then Chicago again.
And then New York. So it'll be the fourth time.
Fourth time. Yeah.
My God.
You travel. We've both been traveling a lot, but you travel a fuck ton. It's kind of crazy. You love the Midwest.
It's not so much that I love the Midwest as it is that I grew up there, and so I feel a magnetic pull. I think Lake Michigan specifically exerts a gravitational force on me.
It's a beautiful lake.
Just have to go every so often. So yeah, next week I'm really excited. We're going to be recording our first in-person episode of Ill Conceived ever.
You've been torturing yourself watching, I think, how many hours of video? Like at least 10 hours at this point.
A lot. Next week's episode, because we got started with sort of the tech natalist and like ideas guy side of things.
Yeah.
I started researching more of the tech natalists with this idea that I do like kind of a high level survey. And then I just started watching videos from NatalCon, which is it would be an exaggeration to say large convention that they have. It's only like a couple hundred people, but it was exciting to watch some of the most cracked people in the world talk about reasons for what?
Oh, no way. So I searched NatalCon 2026 because the next one, because, you know, whenever I hear about these different conventions, one of them being Moms for Liberty that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, my first thought is I want to go to these. But I found on Twitter that race scientist who planted that Zoran Mamdani article in the New York Times about how he failed high school or something. He got bad grades in college.
Is he going to be at NatalCon 26?
He's going to be there. Yeah, he's going to fucking be there. Oh,
are they doing it in Texas again? Where are they going to be?
Let me see. He was also replying to Lyman Stone, friend of the show.
Yes.
So you know, great company. It's wonderful company. I don't see a location quite yet, but it looks like it'll probably be in March or April.
Okay. Yeah, I think it was March or April last year. So the thing about this episode, right, is that it's taking a little longer to cook than I was expecting it would. I'm sifting through a great deal of extremely high quality content. And so I'm excited, of course, to bring that to you. But in the interim period, and with an eye toward making next week's episode as good as possible, we just decided to do another mailbag episode. And the thing is, I've noticed this. It just seems to be that every fourth episode, we've been doing this. So maybe that pattern will continue. I don't really know.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that too. I was like, oh, that's kind of fun. But, you know, we've been doing deep dives. You've been torturing your mind with NatalCon videos, which I'm so fucking excited to do that episode. I also started a day ago to start torturing my mind with 1 Billion Americans by Matt Iglesias. And that's been a very, very fun read so far.
Has it?
So it's been a read, you know. It's been lingering in my mind. So no, I just love that we are just. I feel like the whole part of this show, just generally, like the whole aspect of it, is that it is designed to torture our minds as much as possible. And sometimes you have to like torture your mind for 2 weeks. Sometimes that'll just make a better episode.
Well, because also you come out on the other end with a better understanding of what the thing is that you are up against. The last thing that I want to do is just have a show where we're doing sort of recycled dunks every week, rather than actually like trying to get to the core of what the deal is here and why it matters. I feel an obligation to our listenership, of course, but I also feel a duty to myself. You know, it's a matter of integrity.
Yeah.
It's a matter of being the best version of myself that I can be. But
yeah, but before we move on too far, though, I want to. My goal for 2026 with this show, more than anything else, more than making a continuing, I feel like a very well researched show that we've been doing so far, I want us to go to one of these freak natalism conventions. I really, really, really want to, and I will convince you. I know I will. I will wear you down.
I don't know. I feel like I might be putting myself in danger. I don't want to be in danger.
How do you think I feel?
Well, no, exactly. I don't want to be in more danger than I have to be. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. No, but like the thing is I feel like if we go to one of these things and they see us and maybe Lyman Stone recognizes us. Yeah. I feel like we would talk. Like the thing is with going to especially one of these things, I feel like a lot of these people, they talk a big game online, but when you see them in person, they're like, oh, okay. But this is all that's what they think. They're like, yeah, oh, this is all just sort of a show. Ideologically on my end, it's not really like that at all. I think these people are freaks that are actually irredeemable in a lot of cases. But these people have a lot less, I feel like, ideological principles than people like us.
I'm not sure if that's true. I mean, I guess maybe the only way to find out is by going. But
we could go.
I will say this, right? The thing about NatalCon last year was they had a $1,000 session that you had to buy into.
Oh, God.
And that was the off the record session where they would all hang out and come up with solutions to these problems.
Come on.
That is lightly vetted, apparently, so I don't think we could get into the real meat of the session where they talk about their big picture solutions for natalism. I shudder to think of what those solutions might look like. I'm sure they're really, really cool.
Yeah, I don't know. All I know is my goal will be to get into one of those sessions.
Okay.
God, I will. Oh, I'll do anything to be in the belly of the beast just to see. That is fascinating to me. I want to go undercover.
You can't say it, and they'll see us coming.
Well, they'll forget. They're not listening. They'll never see it coming.
That's right. I'm sure there are none of them listening to this right now. If you're listening to this right now, hey, how you doing?
Lyman Stone might be. I know Lyman Stone has listened to the show. I do know that for a fact.
What's up, bud? No, but we're gonna do some mailbag this week. I think one of the first things that we wanted to talk about was the nature of Elon Musk's sperm, right?
Maybe my favorite response to an episode I think we've ever gotten. Yeah.
So far. There's still room for improvement.
Yeah. So just for context, before we read this reply, we've been getting some of course the real listeners, the people that listen to this show primarily are people who know who we are, and are familiar with the kind of show we're doing. But for some reason, in the last 2 weeks, there has been a weird exposure to a weird centristy sort of right wing guy who just doesn't know who we are at all, in any capacity, and have been leaving the strangest replies, and we've been getting a lot of them, and this in particular.
Yeah, it's hard to know where these people are coming from, but I think, let me put it this way. I think when you put an episode out that's called Elon Musk, a podcast where the episode title is Elon Musk, you're going to just get certain people, because there are people who follow him around everywhere, right? He has sort of a cult of personality, and there's a lot of people who follow him who think that he can do no wrong. And I think that's the deal with this particular person who left us some very helpful feedback on Spotify. So this is from the user, and I want to make sure I get this name right. T45LLH1 WECRW VMB GXCX 9D1EEZ.
Incredible name.
Easy name to remember. Probably one of my favorite guys in recent memory. I believe it's pronounced to 45 91 easy. And he says, "My God, you two don't know how sexual reproduction works. Only the father determines the sex of the child." That's in all caps. "Elon has an excess of Y sperm. Conspiracy not required." Second comment. "Bringing up coin flips, bringing up the fact of multiple women partners. Have either of you taken Biology 101? This is a natalism podcast, and you literally don't even know how babies are made." He continues, Egg cells have an X chromosome. Sperm cells have either X or Y chromosomes. A given male does not have 50-50 X sperm and Y sperm. I hope this helps. Read a book, kids.
When I first saw the first part of that reply, when they're like, you don't even know how reproduction works, I was like, oh God, wait, did I like fuck something up? And then by the end of it, I'm like, oh wait, this guy might be insane. Like this person might actually just straight up not like they were like, this is not a conspiracy, but then they say a conspiracy theory that he somehow knows Elon Musk has the ratio exclusively Y sperm.
That's what's so bizarre, right? Like, because this comment is correct to the extent that there are sperm that carry the Y chromosome, there are sperm that carry the X chromosome, and the fertilized embryo ends up being either XX or XY based on that combination, right? Mm-hmm. Or if there is some sort of a deformity, sometimes you can actually end up with an extra sex chromosome, and that is how you get like intersex people. There are other things that can happen as a result of that. Again, there's not just one or the other outcome. As with everything, there are lots of different potential outcomes because, again, genetics isn't that simple. But I think what's going on here is that this is somebody who, it's very interesting, the phrase, the father determines the sex of the child. That is technically true insofar as only sperm carries Y chromosomes. Right?
Yeah.
Eggs do not. And so to that extent, yes. But it's not as if the father determines the sex of the child in the sense that Elon Musk is like, well, I'm just going to have nothing but boys. And that's what ends up happening, which I feel like is what this is implying. That he's like a super sperm, like Y only carrier.
Yeah. And he's got like 90% male sperm, like Y sperm, which is like, that's not there. I don't think there has been a single case of that ever.
And then I was like, this doesn't sound right. So I want to look into the actual science of this. And what I found was a number of different studies that looked at discordant gender families, right? Where there are families that either have had a ton of girls and a ton of boys. Because they were like, oh, well, maybe it is a result of the fathers are, they tend one way or the other. No, it turns out that like in these families where it's all boys or all girls, it's pretty fucking close to 50-50.
Yeah.
And so the reality of the situation is science doesn't actually quite know. We have not managed to quite figure out why it is that this happens, but it's not as simple as, you have this disproportionate amount of Y sperm or X sperm. That is a thing that can happen.
Right.
But again, that does not actually correlate with having proportionally more boys or proportionally more girls. That's just not the way it works. And so I learned something from this very confident and very incorrect individual. So I guess
thank you for that, frankly.
All that is to say, thank you for the letter. We appreciate you here on the mailbag.
And something I feel like within this comment is assuming that Elon Musk isn't using in vitro fertilization,
right?
But he is like sort of on record as, at least for most of his kids, like at least 90% of them having used in vitro fertilization. Like he is on record on thinking it's a good thing that people should take advantage of. So it's not like a huge leap to assume that he probably uses it, especially for some of these people. I don't think he's like really spent a lot of time with, like Ashley St. Clair. I feel like that was definitely a situation of in vitro fertilization, baby.
Yeah, I can't remember if that was documented or not, but that was the other thing that I found when I started to then continue my research, was I found an article from the New York Times from October called "Elon Musk Wants Big Families. He Bought a Secret Compound for His."
Yeah.
And
I can't believe I totally fucking forgot about this, by the way, because I remember seeing this article at the time when it came out. It was like on my radar for a while. Of course, like there was a lot of people talking about like compound baby jokes. The Onion, famously to me, but The Onion took 2 full pages out, like making fun of the compound. So it's like, it's not like I didn't see it. So it's crazy to me that I totally forgot to mention it in the Elon Musk episode. But yeah, he like has a whole compound of his mothers and children, essentially, right? Like that is like what he's trying to do all in one like location.
And at least according to this article from the Times, the only woman who is like actually living there right now is Siobhan Zillis, who is an executive at Neuralink.
Yeah.
But the article does confirm that Justine Musk and Elon, that all 5 of their children were via IVF.
Oh, wow.
And it goes on to confirm that at least one of the kids that he had with Grimes was also via IVF. So...
yeah. I mean, I didn't really get into this because I didn't think it was really relevant. But I mean, like, there have been reports that he has a fucked up penis. So...
Am I really?
Yeah, Ashley St. Clair, when she came out, was like, yeah, he's kind of got like a fucked up penis.
Got a
That's
weird
why
dick?
he does. He's got a weird dick because he got like some sort of surgery on it to make it bigger or something. And
He
it
had
fucked
a
it up.
like a botched penis surgery?
He had a botched penis surgery, allegedly. I'm saying
Allegedly.
But
As alleged by Ashley St. Clair.
which is, of course, one of the mothers of one of his kids.
Right.
So I am inclined to believe that to a certain extent. So I'm not surprised if he has like pretty much just resorted only to IVF. All of this to say is he's, a crazy person when it comes to having children. There was even more that I just didn't even go into on that episode. Yeah.
Well, and there's a lot to be said here, too, I think, about the detachment of the act of sexual congress itself and reproduction. We sort of alluded to that a little bit in the Musk episode, but this is a topic of real contention among a lot of the sort of trad natalists. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the big points of friction between the trad natalists and the tech natalists.
Yeah, it seems like the tech natalists typically are the ones who are doing it for the, like, we need to have the 20 children. We need to do IVF. We have to have like 3 different mothers minimum to speed the rate up.
They're okay with surrogacy.
Yeah.
They're okay with, exactly.
Which is like an interesting thing because I don't think they're inherently a bad thing. But then something that a friend of mine actually mentioned to me when we did the IVF episode, I think that was episode 3 or 4. I can't even remember.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
But a conversation she brought up to me was that, like, with IVF, you can sort of verge in the territory of eugenics.
Yes.
Which is like a genuinely real conversation to be had about this, especially when it's used for people like Elon Musk, where they maybe only intentionally have male children. And
right.
and it's a topic that I do want to explore on the show at some point, like the eugenics of family planning in some cases, because I think it's genuinely a very deep and interesting conversation. I don't really quite know how to have that yet, but it's one I'm planning on.
Yeah, it's definitely one that I've got in the hopper as we continue to, I think, talk about the practical side of the movement, because so much of what we've been talking about so far has been ideology, specifically on the Christian side of things. Whereas I think in this next set of episodes, we're really going to be looking at like how the rubber hits the road. Mm-hmm. What have been the proposed solutions to this problem, such as it is, and what are the effects of those proposed solutions?
But speaking, one last comment that we got about Elon Musk. This was an interesting one that we got on YouTube, so it wasn't technically a mailbag in our email, but someone left a fascinating reply on the YouTube. So I'm gonna read this. This is from Don Chups. The whole Legion thing is even lamer than you think. Musk believes he's in Warhammer 40k for real, and he's the main guy emperor. In that game, the God Emperor is some supernatural immortal dude who creates 15 or 20 boys, all male, of course, with his godly genoseed. No women involved, just sci-fi vats. Each one of those guys uses their demigod genoseeds to create legions that conquer the galaxy by genociding every other alien who happened to live there, and genociding the genetically deviant. And of course, the only official religion is the cult of the God Emperor. Also in that game, the guys charged with keeping the machines working are some monks called Adeptus Techno Mechanicus. Just like his fucking kid. His kid. That's his kid's. That's one of his kids' name.
Yeah.
The one that we were like, Techno Mechanicus? That's crazy. No, he is like
what
a Warhammer
fucking
guy.
Loser.
Yeah. So like up until that point, I was like, this feels like a stretch. But no, he is like this kind of nerd.
Yeah.
Like he is this kind of guy. And then he continues. So he's taking the clues for his natalist space conquering fantasies from a board game made by Brit teens in the 80s, mocking the Thatcher era. A game that basically, what if Lord of the Rings, but in space? But there's also heavy metal demons and the fascist police is adoring a living corpse. how can he have so much money and be so lame? It is just like maybe he just really likes Warhammer 40K and also happens to be the same sort of natalist as the God Emperor and named one of his kids after that whole concept, or maybe it's a coincidence. With Elon Musk, the thing is he sort of just says exactly what he believes. He doesn't really hide too much of what he really thinks. So I'm inclined to believe that. If anything, it's just a very interesting insight into how he views children and the whole Legion concept.
And I think that's a good point. And that was from the comment, the thing about how he just has no filter and just says whatever he wants. Or was that you saying that, June?
That was just me saying that, yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I think that's also a good point. His lack of, I don't know, I think about another thing from that episode, which was that I ended up stitching in something a little bit later, a quote from his daughter, Vivian, right? Because somebody else pointed out in the comments that we fudged the timeline a little bit by accident. We had accidentally said that she came out in 2022, whereas in fact she came out in 2020. And then 2022 was when she changed her name and everything. But I think a lot about that quote that I put in there from her, where she says, like, it's not as if your kid coming out to you as trans is just going to suddenly make you a right-wing freak, right?
Right.
In that the things that he posts online are only a fraction of like who he is, right? We're only seeing a portion of his true self, but that is a piece of him that you can see moving further and further to the right, which again, she pointed that up as well, which is further to the right. Not only does he not have a filter, he doesn't really seem to have a separation between his inner monologue and his external life. He just kind of fucking says whatever.
Yeah, which is interesting because I feel like, especially at the point we're in, maybe it's just because he is as wealthy as he is, it doesn't really matter. Maybe his life is just that intertwined in that way, and it doesn't really matter. But I find that fascinating that he's just he is exactly who he says he is online. I think he's like a natalist Nazi, the type of person that we talk about often, especially as we will be going forward. And just one last thing about the Vivian thing. I think I said that like, oh, this was the thing that made him a fascist and like a transphobe. And like I feel like a correction to that is I don't think Vivian coming out specifically is what did it, but I don't think it's a totally separate thing. I do think that was like a piece of it, and of course not blaming her. It's obviously not on any trans person if coming out to them makes you transphobic. That is not what I'm saying at all. And the thing that I have always thought is he intentionally has all the children he does as a natalist project, and transitioning ruins that. And I think it ruins his plan. It ruins his plan, and I think that's why it drove him crazy. I don't think it's Vivian's fault, of course not.
Right.
But I do think it put a bullet in his plan as he thought it would play out.
Especially to have your oldest living child do that, right? Because then it's, I think, again, from his perspective, now it's like, oh no, my two eldest are both dead now.
Yeah, which is exactly how he talks about it. Yeah. God, it's definitely a lot of weird shit with that guy. But I don't want to talk just about Elon Musk because we got a lot of really good mailbags specifically pertaining to the homeschooling episode. But before we get to that, I wanna read this one there was a really nice little reply. The email's titled "Benching," and this is from this is from Lawrence Becker, and this one says, "Just listen to the Elon Musk episode. Benching the bar absolutely counts. Keep it up. The only person you're comparing yourself with is yourself. I started with just the bar and kept at it, thanks to the encouragement and forehead kisses from my partners. Partner B and I did once get confused for gym bros by a young man and had to clarify that actually we're gym bros and fags. Thanks for the informative podcast and keep being yourself." I love that. I love the encouraging reply there because I think, I was thinking about this after the episode. I was like, oh, I kind of made fun of you a little bit. I was like, oh, look at you just benching the bar.
No, you didn't.
But I love that reply. reply because, I think it's important, to get in shape. I think what's that phrase? A fascist worked out today, have you? And I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind going ahead. I think it's very important to stay fit and stay in shape. I'm not one of those like, oh, rah, you got to like get like the biggest muscles possible. But, I'm about 30. I'm almost 30 in almost 2 weeks exactly. I think, I've been thinking about like my health a lot more.
Yeah.
So I've been doing some working out too, not like lifting, but walking, running,
Sure.
treadmill type shit.
You can always start lifting, and I got to say, yeah, the appeal of forehead kisses from the boys, that's huge, frankly, and I hadn't even thought about that possibility.
Do you get those
but
when you
Alex?
I
don't. No, Alex is not kissing me on the forehead. But
maybe he should be.
Maybe.
I don't know your guys' friendship.
I don't think that's exactly the nature of our friendship. But I do think that definitely holds some appeal, just on a conceptual level. So
yeah. But no, I thought that was a wonderful reply.
Yes,
I just wanted to include that one. Yeah.
And again, that was Lorenz, right?
Lorenz.
Thank you, Lorenz, for those heartwarming words. And I guess we got another message here from the mailbag that I'm going to go ahead and read as we dig out another letter.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so heavy. Oh, wait, I can lift it really easily. I can lift it so easily because I've been training.
You've been lifting that bar.
So this one's from Shar, who says, "Hello, my favorite J Duo hosts." That's us.
Aw, yay.
I'd been looking forward to your episode on homeschooling and was not disappointed. As someone who was homeschooled all the way up through high school for religious reasons, I can personally attest to the accuracy of the information you presented. If you don't mind a sort of long-winded anecdote, I'd like to share my experience with it. My parents are evangelical Southern Baptists, which is essentially a regional Westboro adjacent type of denomination, in case you're unfamiliar, and we lived in central Arkansas from when I was born up to age 14 before moving to Virginia, if that gives you any indication for how I was raised. Growing up in small-town Arkansas, we were already pretty isolated by default. Not that we lived in a super rural area, we still had a PC with dial-up internet, etc., but because our only real interactions with anyone else in our age group were either at church or in the local homeschool co-op, understandably, I was fairly socially inept, and it took a while to become accustomed to meeting regular people and adapting to life outside that faith-based microcosm. Like, I don't think there were any black people at our church, and I didn't even know any black people, homeschooled or otherwise, until I was maybe 13.
That's wild.
I feel that the lack of diversity and the segregation from greater society really set me back in terms of how to function as a social being in the real world. It also took a long time to unlearn some very harmful stereotypes that my parents reinforced, either overtly or subconsciously, and to relearn what it means to be an individual who's part of a much bigger reality beyond my own very limited scope of experiences. At one point, I remember begging to go to public school when I was maybe in middle school, high school age, because the majority of my peers at church did. But my mom refused. Maybe she also suspected I had ADHD and wouldn't do well in that environment anyway, but that's ancillary. Her main concern was that I would be exposed to things she couldn't account for and be around people who would influence me with different non-religious ideas about the world. It felt like a lack of trust on her part, either in herself, me, or both. You're definitely spot on with homeschooling being used as a means of maintaining control over kids, both socially and ideologically. It's taken several years of therapy and relearning to realize it was not normal and to adjust from the indoctrination. As you correctly identified, the main reason they wanted to homeschool me and my 4 siblings, not quite quiverful numbers, but certainly pronatalist, was to ensure we'd be insulated from secular education, specifically from being taught that evolution and sex ed were factual rather than worldly lies. When I was a pubescent teen, the extent of my sex education was that sex is only okay when it's heterosexual and within the heterosexual institution of heterosexual marriage, and they weren't necessarily sticklers about it being purely for procreation since they aren't Catholic, but masturbation was totally off limits as a sin, adultery, and it was always heavily implied that having kids should be the main reason for sex. Pleasure during sex was simply a plus for the man, specifically, and forget sex safety.
Of course.
That was for recreational heathens. We had a strictly abstinence-only education, which truly does everyone a disservice by promoting ignorance. And the section where you covered how parents feel betrayed when kids renounce their faith or stray from their ideology was particularly poignant for me, except in my case, my parents, and especially my mom who taught us, internalized it instead. I was actually really sad, because when I respectfully told my parents I no longer shared their faith or worldview after I'd moved out, my mom said she felt like a failure. And honestly, I can't blame her for that, since she really believes I'm going to hell or whatever because I don't believe certain things and that she's responsible for it. She really took it personally, since she felt like it was her fault I abandoned the faith and had broadened my horizons despite her best efforts to use a biblically based curriculum. As a side note, none of my other siblings are Christian anymore and have all moved on to having normal secular lives, so my parents adopted 4 kids from China to try the indoctrination process again?
4? That's wild.
Holy shit.
Wild,
The cycle
wild,
continues.
wild shit.
To my mom's credit, she did encourage me to be inquisitive, albeit working from the presumption I would question secular science as intrinsically false, and the Bible is fundamentally true, but also to have a strong enough foundation in my faith so it would hold up under scrutiny by defending it with analytical apologetics. However, at the same time, they also didn't want us to question the belief system to the extent that we would lose faith by learning about other worldviews as being more credible. Unfortunately for them, as an unintended consequence of questioning and seeking out answers, I learned critical thinking skills and am now an agnostic bisexual socialist. Anyway, thanks for your time reading all that. Appreciate what you do. Keep up the great work putting this information out there. Your friend of the pod, Shar. P.S. Apologies to Josh, but I'm also inclined to say June and Josh. It just sounds...
It just rolls off the tongue.
That's exactly what she says. It just sounds more natural phonetically. Sorry. All right. Well, I was right on board until the very end there, Shar, but thank you for your email.
I win again.
God damn it. Fuck.
Yeah, no, but there are many such cases of, I feel like I know so many people that had like really hyper religious upbringings that then were exposed to some sort of contradictory info, and then the whole wall came down on their whole like education. It's something I think about a lot, where I think I even brought this up on the homeschooling episode, where a lot of people on the right, when they talk about the ideology of having kids and teaching them specific worldviews, in this case, like a very religious, like anti-science upbringing and education, they're like, oh, if we just raise our kids the right way, the ideologically right way, then we'll stamp out this Marxist plot to destroy the country. And it's like in a lot of cases, like that does work, especially if you're like in the South. Giving people propaganda will propagandize them very effectively in a lot of cases, which is why they do it.
Especially if it's the only thing that is around you, right?
Yeah. It's your community. It's your whole life. But yeah, no, I feel like when people are exposed to it, which especially in the internet age, a lot of people will be, it really does just collapse the whole effort, which is interesting. And then you got to adopt 4 children from China.
That's just,
wild aspect of all of that. Yeah.
and we're going to have to do an adoption episode at some point, and maybe even specifically focus on transnational adoption, because adoption is one of those things that is framed, I think, as being this act of generosity that is undertaken by the parents who adopt. And oftentimes what happens is this, it sets up this environment where some of the parents who adopt are actually really fucking bad parents. And they will be like, well, how can you be mad at me? I fucking saved your life. You should be grateful. Like, this is something that I've heard about, particularly from transnational adoptees who end up getting adopted into white evangelical families. And it is, of course, also another way of carrying on the project of ideological transfer and trying to get people who otherwise would not even know probably about that philosophy, right? Like if you're adopting transnationally from China, those are kids who otherwise would not be growing up in like a westernized Christian environment, right?
Yeah. 1 out of every 1,000 a person from China is probably an evangelical
but
Christian, maybe even less than that.
A friend of mine who is a transnational adoptee from Korea, he refers to the people who then grow up but still hold on to the ideology of their adoptive families without questioning anything else about how they got moved over or like their birth families or anything like that is being sort of in the fog. That's how it's referred to in the adoption community. And it's not
I've never heard that.
And it's and the reason that I think this is interesting is that it's not dissimilar from that thing about the house of cards that you get with the ideology when you start to pull at one piece and then the whole thing starts to come apart.
Yeah.
It's very similar for transnational adoptees, many of them, when they start to be like, well, but what exactly happened to me when I was a baby? And then you go and you start to learn about what really happened, and then you look at the documents that were furnished, and they don't sometimes fully line up. The story that is being told on those documents might not fully comport with reality. Particularly for if you were adopted out from a place like, say, South Korea, which was dealing with the aftermath of the Korean War well into the 80s and even early 90s.
Right. No, I mean, that is a common thing that I do know about people who are adopted, where it's like they get to the age where they want to learn about like where they came from. And I can imagine it only feels crazier if you were someone who was born in South Korea and then is an American and with white parents. Like, I can't imagine the disconnect. Maybe that maybe I don't know if it's a disconnect from the adopted parents. Maybe not all cases. I mean, I feel like in the best case scenario, people who are adopted do feel like they are the like true children. And of course, you know, this sort of goes into a weird thing with adoption also, in that there is there is this idea that you are not really someone's child if you're adopted, which I don't agree with. I think blood, like being blood born from like
being bloodborne. You're going around with a cleaver. You're hacking away at guys in a castle. Yeah.
I guess the way I'll say it is just like, if you are adopted, I don't think that makes you less of someone's child.
No, of course not.
Necessarily. And I think there are some people that do think that, and I think that's like a bad way to look at adoption, and especially not even just a bad way to look at adoption, but a really bad way of looking at like having children generally. I feel like that plays a little bit into like the Legion thing, sort of like the dynasty, and I actively dislike that. But I do feel like there is that base level where you do want to know like where you came from, and that probably feels really intense if it's a different country.
Yeah, particularly if it's one that you have no frame of reference for whatsoever. And I think that the people who we see who sort of embark on these projects of passing on Western Christian values, right? They are treating these kids as essentially tabula rasa, where now that you're with us, we're going to basically just build you up from the ground up. And whatever you had before, that was past. That was we have rescued you out of that environment that otherwise would have been so bad for you and deleterious to your outcomes. We're giving you a much better life here. Why aren't you thankful, right? There's definitely this sense of entitlement that comes along with a lot of international adoptors, I guess.
It's like philanthropy, but in like a weird, different way. It's a different type of philanthropy.
And it's a commonality, I think, with the natalists. It's a commonality whether you're talking about adopting kids, giving birth to kids via traditional means, giving birth to kids via artificial means. It doesn't really matter. They seem to believe that their act of raising these children is a gift to humanity. That's sort of the first principle that they start from.
Absolutely. They're like saving the world. And I mean, that's Elon Musk's perspective that having children is like an inherent net positive on the world. Like him having 20 children that he'll never have a hand in raising is a good thing. But I'm actually stunned that this is the first time I think we've mentioned adoption at all in the show, and we've never even like discussed it as like a topic for the show.
Yeah,
we'll have to do an adoption episode. I'm like stunned we've never even like in passing when talking about episode topics. I thought we had
touched on it briefly, but then maybe it got cut. I'm not sure. That's the other thing that I should note. A little peek behind the curtain is that most of these episodes of the show, we are cutting a lot because particularly the episodes that are really research heavy, it takes a while sometimes for us to like get to the point that we're trying to make. Sometimes there are things where it's like, oh, I said this, but I didn't really like the way I said it. I'm going to start over again. There's some hemming and hawing. What you hear, on the other hand, is pure, crisp, uninterrupted audio. And that's because, I edit these so that we sound much, much smarter and more erudite than we really are.
No, you're a godsend for going through that and doing it, because I think so. I think our longest episode, which was the homeschooling episode, I think it was like an hour and 45 minutes. I think that one took 3 hours to record.
Was it 3 hours?
It was like almost. It was like at least 2.5 hours. It was
pretty long.
Minimum.
It was like a worst of all possible worlds length recording session. Yeah.
Yeah, we put a lot into recording each episode. Yeah. So this isn't from any of the mailbags we're reading today, but we get a lot of very positive replies about and emails about this show, and I hope everyone knows that we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because we do put a lot of, not to toot our own horns, but I think we do a lot of research and like time. We put a lot of time into this show.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing where I think it's very easy to just put something out that is a piece of content and be like, all right, we've done the content deliverable. For me, this show is as much about like learning more with you specifically, June, so that we both have a better base of knowledge. It's about, I think we like teach each other a lot. And
absolutely.
So for me, all of the pieces of the thing, from researching to recording to then editing, are part of the same package. I need to do all of it, even though it's a much heavier weight than it would be if we were to do, I don't know, an easier show, in air quotes, which I think was originally what the idea was. But,
Yeah, I think we might have said this on a different episode, but at first it was like the concept is, ill-conceived, it'll be a show where we do like 30
half hour a week. Yeah.
And then very quickly it was like, all right, this one's nearing 2 hours, which is, I feel like, just is the nature of who you and I both are, especially on topics we care about and are interested in.
There's really two kinds of podcasters, right? It's like the ones who's like 60 minutes and I'm done, or the podcasters like, all right, we are reaching our 5th hour of recording.
Yeah. And like, one last thing on podcasting specifically as like an art. There's as an art, I think like with both of my shows, I think the thing with both of them, with Kill the Computer and Ill Conceived, is I want each episode to, be a fun experience, but at least have some relevant topic in things that are happening in the world, or something that I find important, because I feel like, and I'm not like throwing shade on anyone in particular, because I enjoy a lot of these shows, but there is like the type of podcast where you just like sit and maybe talk to like a guy who like, it's just like a basic talk interview type show where you like say a couple of jokes, and those are great shows, but like I want to do something a little bit more like a topic first show, rather than like the like guest is the person.
Yeah.
We're just hanging out, which I love a hangout podcast. That's like half of what Kill the Computer has like always been. But I think the topic is like the thing. Like digging into a topic is the thing that's most important.
Yeah, I don't think I'm like parasocial enough for that. Like there are some people who are really, really good as podcasters at establishing the sense of like, I'm your best friend, who you're listening to right now through your headphones. And just going to say to you, if you as the listener think that I'm your best friend, fuck you. I hate you.
I'll be the best friend.
You suck.
Josh, you're so mean. You're so mean. Oh my God, you're so mean.
I'm so mean.
You're so mean.
I'm cruel.
All right.
Every podcast needs the cruel host and the nice host.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
like good cop, bad cop.
Exactly.
You're the bad cop. You're the bad host. I'm the good host.
Right.
Yeah. And you know, as you reveal yourself as the bad host, this person reaching out to us in the mailbag, Elise,
yes,
throw you a bone, rewarded you for your cruel nature. She says, "Hi, Josh and June."
Yes.
I know, another one for you. I know. I can't believe it. And she continues, "The homeschooling episode was a tough listen for me. Me being homeschooled had a huge negative impact on how my life played out, and I want to talk about it in a way that adds some context to the episode's content. My state, Nebraska, had no standard whatsoever to ensure homeschool students are learning at a specific grade level.
Oh, wow.
You just sign a paper every year saying your student is homeschooled or in grade whatever. So my parents, keen on raising a genius, had me skip grades and was having me do a sophomore year of high school at age 14. They didn't have to show any evidence to anyone. They just declared me a sophomore level student. That's crazy, especially because we were talking about like with homeschooling or schooling in general. It's not necessarily about like the all straight A grades. It's, you know, it's about like developing as a person. And I feel like skipping grades with no proof of that actually being like an achievement sort of it can stunt people. I feel like this is just me editorializing, by the way.
No, I'm with you, especially as regards like socialization or lack thereof among a peer group.
Yeah, no, that has to be, and I'm sure she gets more into this, but that has to be like a socially horrible situation to be in. And she continues, "Before my junior year, I convinced them to let me enroll in public school so I could participate on the public school sports team. Our rural Nebraska homeschooling community was too small for real teams for most sports. So at age 15 and 16, I did my junior and senior years of high school.
Oh, man.
The end result is me starting college enrolled in a high-pressure honors program at university before I even turned 17.
That's too much, man.
Wow,
That's a
so
lot of
much
pressure.
Wow. My parents put a lot of effort into homeschooling me, and the education was good, so I was knowledgeable enough to have excellent standardized testing scores and was probably ready academically to learn at a college level. However, I was so young and inexperienced. There was tons of real life challenges in college I wasn't prepared for, like the first breakup of my life from a 1-year relationship.
Yeah.
I fell into a bad depression and failed all my classes, did a semester out of the honors program on academic probation, then ultimately dropped out of college, and the rest of my life exists in the shadow of that failure. If I had just had a normal high school childhood and started college at 19, I might have succeeded in that honors program and my life would look so different. My parents did homeschool me specifically for the Christian ideological reasons of sheltering me. It made me furious to hear them describe a benefit of homeschooling as not feeling judged by other kids. No one feels as judged by other kids as the homeschooled outcast. A weekly 2-hour youth group does not replace the social life of spending 5 days a week around all the other kids your age at public school. I wish my parents had prioritized me and not their ideological project and desire to brag about their 16-year-old going to college already. Thanks so much for the show. It's helping me come to terms with what my upbringing actually was. Thanks for everything, Elise."
Well, Elise, thank you for that email. The first thing I just wanted to say was coming to terms with stuff that you regret fucking sucks. It really hurts a lot. I'm glad to hear that our show has sort of helped you with processing it a little bit. And obviously you've got the rest of your life to figure out, you know, what it is that you do want to end up doing. And I'm sure it sounds like you already have been. So I'm glad about that much.
Yeah. And I think, you know, thank you for sort of letting us peek into just how your life has been in this really ideologically Christian upbringing. And I think that's something that we touched on a lot in that episode. And I think the big fear that we both, you and I, Josh, have, and why we are generally against homeschooling is it really can impact people's lives for a long time, if not people's entire life. Like, I don't know how old, Elise, that you are, but I can imagine that it has had like a big impact. And I guess just one thing I do want to say is it's never like too late to go back to college. Like I'm assuming you're probably like 22, maybe 23. I don't actually know. But it's like, I think now that you're maybe a little bit older, sort of reckoning with what was, a hard part in your youth. Like maybe you can from there sort of revisit what you want to do just as an option. I'm not trying to do a therapy session right now, but also I just want to throw that out there too.
Also, even if you're like, I don't know, like 40 or 50, or maybe you're one of our 80-year-old listeners. Either way, like education is, I think, an ongoing lifelong pursuit. And I can understand the impulse to be like, because I had to drop out, that makes, like, that was a failure and that failure defines me. It sounds like that's what I'm hearing, at least. I just don't, I don't think that's true. I think it's just a part of what your story is. I don't know. I don't know you, so I hope that's helpful. I will say this. I'm very interested in the piece. It made me furious to hear them describe a benefit of homeschooling as not feeling judged by other kids, because that was one of the things that we talked about in that book. Remember how I had that list of things that homeschooled kids avoid? And one of those things was they don't get judged. They're not going to be subject to that peer judgment. And like just because you're not necessarily experiencing it in a classroom setting in that moment doesn't mean that you won't be subject to that judgment later on / in your life in other contexts, right?
Yeah. And I think a important part of life is like learning how to deal with things like that. And like sometimes a lot of people learn how to deal with that by going through it. I mean, that's just part of being human is learning from mistakes, learning from bad experiences. And I mean, that's part of like education. That's part of growing up. That's just part of being a human. And I think that is like ultimately the worst part about people that do this sort of ideological sheltering is that they will not let their kids have these experiences for maybe like good intentions.
Yeah, they don't want them to get hurt, right? Like it's like understandable.
The greatest, that's like the most understandable thing in the world as a parent, I assume. Like I'm assuming parents don't want their kids to be hurt in any way, but that's just not realistic,
right? Well, and I think too, I remember there was the moment in that homeschooling episode too where you had started to talk a little bit about the bullying thing, and then you were like, "I think all kids should be bullied." No, that wasn't what you said.
Yeah, not what I said. Also, I don't believe that. There was someone that was like, "That was a weird thing to say," and I was like, I didn't respond to that person, and I hope like I don't think people should be bullied. Let me just say clear. I think bullying is bad. Bullying other kids in school is bad.
Absolutely. But I think,
on the record,
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you were going for there was you will invariably be subjected to some sort of hostility in your life.
Right.
And it certainly doesn't excuse it in like a school setting. But having those experiences can be a way that a person's metal is shaped, and that there is something that you can develop as a result of interpersonal conflict.
Right. It like, for lack of a better phrase, and I sort of hate this phrase, and this is like purely for no other reason than just someone like in my life saying this when I was like 15, not at me, but someone I knew, but it builds character. I hate that phrase. I hate it. But I mean, that's like really what it does.
Just reminds me of Calvin's dad from Calvin and Hobbes.
Builds character. But it does, it does.
Yeah.
On some level.
And that's not even getting into if the home environment is not good, right? And we talked a little bit about that as well, but somebody sent along in, I believe it was one of our Discords, a link to an article about how just recently in the state of Illinois, they were trying to pass legislation that would make it so that convicted child sex offenders couldn't homeschool their kids. Yeah. And the HSLDA got involved to spike the bill and succeeded.
They spiked it.
And then this news outlet did some research into these people who they had speak against the bill, and it turned out that a number of them were convicted child sex offenders.
Unreal. And also goes to the evil that is that organization, because
Like,
they're
that's
apparently siding with the legal rights of sex offenders,
Like,
which is
that's
insane.
so fucking evil. I don't know
Yeah.
where to even begin with that.
Average libertarian dream.
I guess.
Yeah. No, I couldn't believe my eyes. Like, I had to read that headline 3 times because I was like, wait, there's no fucking
That can't
way
be right.
That's like the most evil. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, crazy.
Yeah, I feel like if anything, in general, when I'm leading episodes that I've researched, like I don't want to lean too heavily into, I think these people are terrible, because then I don't know. I think it can get in the way of being as objective as possible by like using that kind of charged language. But
Right.
the reality is that they're really, really bad fucking people.
Yeah.
Or if not bad people, they have at least created an organization that is facilitating really bad fucking things happening.
Yeah, they're ideologically aligned with a bad project.
Exactly. And so at the end of the day, I don't really care whether you personally are somebody who I would get along with or not. If you are allowing those sorts of things to happen, if you are a co-founder of or working for an organization that is going to go to bat for the rights of convicted child sex offenders to homeschool potentially the kids that they are abusing, yeah, I'm going to have a fucking problem with that.
Absolutely. And then I think we have just one more mailbag that we want to go over today. Yeah.
This is a brief one, but I'm just going to read. This is from Anna, who says, "Hi, June and Josh." You're doing so well, Anna. "Hi, June and Josh. English forces us to list names in an order. If it was up to me, I'd just mash your names together in no order at all." Oh, okay. Some people have done that. Somebody sent like one of Junch.
Yeah, I think I saw a Juice. It was, what was it? John. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I can't even remember.
It's good,
I saw
though.
it though. It's like a mishmash of our names. Yeah.
And then so this is the body of the email. It says, "Pulled yourself up by your list straps."
List straps. Come on.
Thank you. I have no other notes because I was raised atheist. So I don't really know what this means, but I like it, which is why I wanted to. What do you think about this phrase?
I think so I feel like with this show, we have sort of created like a format to every episode completely unintentionally. It's sort of just a thing that sort of just happened with the show,
right.
Like as we have continued to do it. And I think the lists aspect of it is one of those things that like just started off. Like you had the list in your first one, and I was
right.
like, wait, I fuck with lists.
Right.
I really fuck with having lists. And then I think from there, I had my list on my second episode, and
right.
then it just became a staple.
Well, same thing with the mailbag, right?
Yeah,
the mailbag was not always our famous segment.
And now it is. This is a very famous episode you're listening to.
Absolutely. World famous.
I love I love, and this is just not really going on the list straps. I love the list straps comment, and that's wonderful. But I just love knowing that the listeners to this show really appreciate the like silly little things that we do to like make each other laugh.
That's right.
While doing this show, like I guess I'm just glad that our joy comes across and is shared by the audience.
I'm glad that we are not the only ones laughing at our jokes.
Yeah, it's a relief, frankly. Yeah, it's a relief,
is.
Yeah.
One could argue that we pulled ourselves up by our list straps. In fact,
it's true. I do it every day. I do it every episode on this goddamn show where we torture ourselves.
Hey.
Frankly, torturing ourselves for this show is part of like the list straps. I think
that's right. That's how you build the list straps before you pull yourself up by them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my Lord. Well,
oh God, I love it.
And actually, here's what I'll say too, right? I think just in general, one of the things that I have found so fun about making this show so far is that it has everything about it, the format, the way that we kind of dig into things, how we do our research, all of it has evolved organically based on what it is that we bring to it, you know?
Yeah,
And I think that there are sometimes podcasts that start out with this very strong idea of like, okay, this is exactly what we're going to be. This is exactly what we're going to do. This is exactly how our format is going to work. And I guess if you're out there and you're thinking about like, oh, I might be interested in starting a podcast or a project of some sort, rather than being very doctrinaire about what the thing is and holding too much to a plan, I think in the early stages of a project, you really just have to let the thing be find what the thing is by doing it. Because I don't know. It's just, in my experience, you don't really find out what the thing is until you've been doing it for a little while.
Absolutely. I feel like we might have even said this on the show before, but I feel like we really found our groove like around episode 5 or 6. And we were like, oh, this is like the like way that we will be doing this show for probably a while. It took us like a solid month and a half. Yeah.
And if list straps need to be involved in that process, go for it, honestly.
Our famous list straps.
That's right.
Segment.
That's right. Oh boy. Well, we'll be back next week for another regular episode. For the time being, we hope you've enjoyed the now regular, apparently every 4 episode mailbag, all mailbag episode. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about or mention, plug, whatever before we get going today, June?
I think I'm good. I don't have anything in particular that's new today that I have to plug.
Well, I will say, if you want to come see me in person, I'm going to be doing a show next week.
That's right. I'll be there. I'm going to be here.
Hooray!
Just for warning. You can now you should plug it now that I'm like, I'll be there. You know, it's very important that before people know what it is, I just want everyone to know I will be there.
Well, and it's important that you'll be there too, because you're the nice one. So like, otherwise they might just show up and get berated by me. But if you're there, then they're also going to get the nice experience. We're basically the podcast mom and dad. Nice mom, mean dad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm going to be participating in a show. It's called Genius Night, a night for geniuses. It's going to be produced by Tom, my friend Tom Harrison, who's one of the boys from the Anime Sickos podcast. Monday, October 20th, 7 p.m. at Cafe Mustache, which is on North Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago, Illinois.
Have you ever been there before?
I have not. Have you?
I have. I've been there a couple of times.
Is it like a DIY space? What's the deal with that?
They host events. They do karaoke every once in a while. I think every Saturday or something like that. But it's just like a cute little space with like a good little event area on like one of the sides where the bar is.
Cool.
It's a cute space. I'm excited to see some stand up because it's like a stand up comedy thing, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of less like a stand up thing and more I don't know. What I'm going to be doing, and I'm very excited about this, is it's going to be sort of extemporaneous debate against your friend and mine, Dono of Radio Free Tote Bag. We're going to be going head to head and debating about some incredibly silly things. But if there's one thing that listeners probably know about me at this point, it's that I don't like to lose. So if you're interested in seeing me debate some very silly ideas and win, come to Cafe Mustache on Monday, October 20th at 7 p.m. I don't think there's like advanced tickets or anything. I think you just kind of fucking show up. But I'll put the info in the episode description as well, I guess. And then come out. I'd love to see you there if you're in Chicago.
Perfect. I can't wait.
Okay. And until next time, I'm Josh.
I'm June.
And don't forget to pull yourself up by your list straps. Bye.
See ya.